Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Pokemon TCG video. Today we're going to be examining a deck that focuses around both the Landorus EX and the Garbodor. So Garbodor is, the whole function of the Garbodor in our deck is to prevent all of our opponent's Pokemon that have any special abilities from really taking into effect. So that means that, for example, we'll be able to circumnavigate around Safeguard Pokemon. We'll be able to snipe our opponent's Pokemon. Mr. Mime won't really be able to stop us. So Garbodor and the Landorus EX are a pretty good combination. Garbodor doesn't seem to be all that much of a Pokemon that we see out in play anymore, but nonetheless I feel like it's a very potent Pokemon, and a proper deck that utilizes the Garbodor is going to be a very effective one. So Garbodor, its Garbotoxin ability only comes into play if it happens to have a Pokemon tool card attached to it. So unfortunately, if there is no Pokemon tool card, that Garbotoxin ability is not going to take place. So the Pokemon tool cards that we'll be running to hopefully latch on to the Garbodor are mainly going to be our float stones. I mean, there's a dual purpose for that. In case any of our active Pokemon do happen to get knocked out, we can go right ahead, bring out that Garbodor, and then we can freely retreat it in between our Pokemon. And of course, given the fact that of course we want that Garbotoxin ability to take into play. But I mean, if we happen to get both of the float stones discarded, Startling Megaphone, or we accidentally happen, well, not accidentally, but we happen to have to discard them through the usage of a card such as Juniper. We're also running a total of 2 copies of the Muscle Band. Ideally, we'd like to save these for the Landorus EX, but nonetheless, we can attach them to the Garbodor just because that special ability really helps us quite a bit. So we are running 2 copies of the Muscle Band and 2 copies of the Float Stone as well. Now moving on to the Landorus EX, this is going to be the main attacker of our deck. Hammerhead is just a very solid attack. For a single energy, we are allowed to snipe one of our opponent's bench Pokemon and hit for up to 30 damage to our opponent's active Pokemon. Now of course this is provided that we don't have any Muscle Bands, strong energies or anything like that. With a strong energy, Hammerhead is able to hit for up to 80 damage for a single energy, a Muscle Band as well. And that's 100 damage for a single energy, guys. So that's very, very potent. Landorus EX is going to be a huge Pokemon in our deck. We also have the Lance Judgment attack, which we could use in certain situations, especially if we want to knock out one of our opponent's troublesome EX Pokemon with a single attack. The downside to the Lance Judgment, though, is that by using this attack, we are forced to discard all fighting energy cards attached to the Landorus EX. So that is something to keep in mind, but nonetheless that is an option. However, we would like to ideally focus on repeatedly using the Hammerhead attack. Another Pokemon that we have in our deck, guys, is going to be the Lucario EX. The main reason I've included Lucario EX is because I want to have a little bit of diversity with respects to the Pokemon's weaknesses. I mean, if we happen to be facing a Seismitoad EX deck, for example, Lucario EX is really the best option for us to bring out as our main Pokemon, just because it can hit for a solid amount of damage, and also the fact that it happens to not have that water resistance. The very last Pokemon that we'll be running in our deck, guys, is going to be the Hawlucha. Its Shining Spirit ability is not all that useful, so we can really afford to shut it down. So that shouldn't really be too big of an issue. I just really like the fact that it has no retreat cost, and Flying Press allows us to hit for 60 damage for a single energy. Of course, again, that's not counting the fact that we are going to be running strong energies and the Muscle Bands in our deck. So Hawlucha can very, very quickly become a menacing Pokemon. So we are running 2 copies of him in our deck as well. Now, the Stadium card in our deck is going to be the Silent Lab. Silent Lab as opposed to the Fighting Stadium for 2 reasons. The first one is that we want to, since our deck is going to be a shutdown type of deck, we want to be able to prevent our opponent's Pokemon special abilities from really being able to get used as soon as we can. So we want to shut down abilities such as Mr. Mime's, Keldeo EXs, Virizion EX, Genesect EXs. So Silent Lab is going to allow us to do that while we ultimately set up and bring out the Garbodor. So we are running 3 copies of the Silent Lab. Believe me, in this type of deck, guys, when we are running the Landorus EX in combination with the Garbodor, Silent Lab seems to be the Stadium card that works better as opposed to the Fighting Stadium. Some other cards we are running a little bit atypical of an A-Spec card. It is going to be the Scoop Up Cyclone. This is because we are running a Scoop Up sort of strategy. So we're going to make life incredibly difficult for our opponents. We're going to repeatedly scoop up our Pokemon back into our hand. and then bring them back out into the field again. The really nice thing about our deck is that each of our Pokemon is able to attack for a single energy, so Scoop Up Cyclone is going to be very, very nice. Just make life that much more difficult for our opponents. So we are running this as our A-Spec card, and of course we're running a total of 4 copies of the Super Scoop Up. Super Scoop Up is a little bit worse than the Scoop Up Cyclone, but of course that would make sense given that Scoop Up Cyclone is an A-Spec card. So with Super Scoop Up, we have to flip a coin, and if we manage to get a head, we return 1 Pokemon and all energy cards attached to it. Well, all cards attached to it back into our hand. So this is going to be pretty nice. We are running 4 copies of the Super Scoop Up. Again, one thing to keep in mind though is that this does rely on a flip coin component. Some other cards in our deck, guys, we are running a total of 3 copies of the Acro Bike. This is mainly to allow us to look through our deck relatively quickly and find those super scoop ups such that we can repeatedly use them over and over again. Now, Acrobike is going to force us to discard a lot of cards into the discard pile. However, that's not something we should really be worried about since we are running a copy of the Lysander's Trump card. Lysander's Trump card is going to allow us to reuse those super scoop ups and things like that all over again. So we are running a single copy of it, and it's also really nice to take care of those Night March type of decks. The other cards in our deck are pretty self-explanatory, guys, so I'm going to be going through them very, very quickly. We are running a single copy of the Professor's Letter to allow us to grab the energy cards that we need, a switch card to allow us to switch in between our Pokemon, 3 Ultra Balls to grab the non-fighting type Pokemon that we have in our deck, 3 VS Seekers allowing us to reuse any of our supporter type cards, a Colress, 4 Ants, and 4 Junipers for some draw support, 3 Corinas allowing us to grab any of our fighting type Pokemon in combination with an item type card in our deck, a single Lysander, and of course the Lysander's Trump card which I had mentioned. We're also running a total of 12 energy cards. 8 of them are the fighting energy and 4 of them are the strong energy to allow us to increase the total damage output of each of our fighting type Pokemon. So with that, we are going to go and see what this deck is capable of. Haven't really played with it a lot, but it was a deck that someone had requested I build, so here I am. We are taking a look at it right before the Roaring Skies set release. And looks like we are going to be facing a Seismitoad EX deck. So this is probably one of the worst sorts of matchups which we can encounter. Hopefully though we can set up our Garbodor nice and early and really take care of our opponent's Seismitoad EX. So yeah, we are seeing those Verbank City Gems, the Hypnotoxic Lasers, things like that. So it looks like we are going to start off with the Hawlucha as our active Pokemon. Let's go and use the Acrobike. And let's go and grab onto another Acrobike, guys. I'm going to use Acrobike one more time. Hopefully we can grab onto one of the Trubbishes. Let's go and grab onto the Lucario EX, which I will be laying down in the bench. We're going to go and attach a Fighting Energy card to the Lucario EX for the time being. Never know, Hawlucha may just get knocked out on the very first turn if our opponent happens to get the Verbank City Gem, Hypnotoxic Laser, Muscle Band, and the Double Colors Energy, which really is not all that difficult for our opponent to lay down. So let's go and use an Acrobike one more time. And awesome, looks like we are going to get the Float Stone. I'm going to go and grab it out and attach it to the Trubbish. Hopefully we can shut down our opponent's Slurpuff line before our opponent's really able to do anything. And then I am going to go and end our turn. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to see the Landorus EX get used all that much in this particular battle, given the fact, of course, that it does have the water weakness, and it's just a very, very poor matchup against our opponent's Seismitoad EX type deck. We are seeing the Double Colors Energy, the Juniper. Not sure why our opponent decided to discard his Muscle. Oh, okay, I'm assuming, yeah, because he was using the Acrobike, so he decided to choose the Hypnotoxic Laser as opposed to the Muscle Band. So that does make some sense. Hopefully I can bring out the Lucario EX and then start using the Corkscrew Smash attack. We're seeing another Hypnotoxic Laser, Tails one more time on our opponent's end. So that is quite nice for us, and that Seismitoad EX only hitting us for a mere 30 damage. That is very positive for us. So let's go and use the and see what we're able to draw into. Awesome, looks like we do have the Silent Lab, but it's probably not going to be all that useful. I will be saving it to negate any Verbank City Gems that our opponent decides to bring out. So let's go and retrieve that Hawlucha, bring out the Lucario EX, attach a Strong Energy to him, and then hit our opponent's Seismitoad EX for 80 damage and draw onto a single card. So this is why I highly recommend you guys do run Lucario EX in combination with the Landorus EX in this type of deck. It's just really nice to have that diversity with respects to the weaknesses. Another Hypnotoxic Laser. This time our opponent is going to flip the heads. Hypnotoxic Laser is probably going to be the most troubling card for us to deal with. We're also seeing a Lysander's Trump card. Our opponent had gotten rid of quite a couple of his cards into the discard pile, but Lysander's Trump card is also going to help us, and looks like we are going to remain asleep unfortunately, this time around. So I'm gonna go and use the Karina to grab onto another Lucario EX, which I will be laying out at play, and an Ultra Ball, because I'm probably gonna have to use the Juniper. So let's go and bring out that Lucario EX. I'm gonna go and attach a Fighting Energy card to it for the time being, and then I have to go and end our turn. Looks like our Lucario EX is unfortunately going to remain asleep. Seismitoad EX, I don't think our opponent should be able to knock out our Lucario EX this turn. Awesome, looks like we are going to get the heads. I feel like I'd really like to retreat that Lucario EX, but I also really want to knock out our opponent's Seismitoad EX. If I were to bring out our bench, Lucario EX would only be able to hit for a maximum of 80 damage. So I think I'm going to go for the knockout, guys. So I'm going to go and attach a Fighting Energy card to the Lucario EX. I'm not going to use the N. I feel like I have a pretty decent hand, so I'm going to hold on to it for the time being. Let's go and use the Somersault Kick, knock out our opponent's Seismitoad EX, and then draw onto 2 of our prize cards. Okay, so I feel like we do have the advantage, but again, with a Seismitoad EX deck, we never really know what's going to happen. Hopefully I can bring out the Garbodor just to shut down our opponent's Swirlix. And okay, so it looks like we're able to use our item type cards all over again. So that's going to be very, very nice for us, guys. So I'm gonna go and okay, so it looks like the opponent is going to quit. Again, though, we didn't really see the Landorus EX come out into play. So I'm gonna go and find ourselves another opponent. Hopefully this time around we can see the Landorus EX in action. So we are just finding ourselves another opponent, but as you guys can see, Lucario EX is a very solid Pokemon. One thing I really dislike about Lucario EX, though, is that whenever it encounters a Mew EX base deck, and given the fact that the Night March decks are pretty common, just a very negative sort of type disadvantage. Again, though, that's why I really do enjoy the fact that we have a little bit of diversity with respects to our Pokemon's weaknesses. Looks like we are going to start off with the Trubbish. Not exactly the greatest start. I'm probably going to have to use the N. We are seeing a Virizion EX, Genesect EX type deck. Now, I do want to bring out that Silent Lab, shut down our opponent's Red Signal ability right away. We're seeing the Chi Booster come out right away as well. I don't believe we're running any Starling Megaphones in our deck just because we don't really need it since we are running a Garbodor type deck, but it could be worthwhile to include it. Unfortunately, looks like in our case we have not. So let's go and bring out the Silent Lab, and then I will be using the N for some new cards in our hand. Okay, so let's go and use the Acrobike. Hopefully we can draw into a Pokemon, and unfortunately doesn't look like we are going to draw into one. Man, hopefully we don't get that knockout. Well, hopefully our Trubbish doesn't get knocked out right away, so I'm gonna go and end the turn. A Muscle Band and another energy card would spell the end for us. That would be a very, very unfortunate start, guys. I'm really hoping that that's not how things go down. We've just gotten extremely unlucky. Hopefully I can use the Karina to grab onto the Landorus EX or Lucario EX during our next turn and then really start dishing out some damage on our opponent's Pokemon. And awesome, looks like we are going to be able to survive, so that's kind of nice. But if I do retreat the Trubbish, that's Genesect EX can easily get rid of it using the Megalo Cannon attack. So it looks like we are going to get a Landorus EX as our active Pokemon. I'm going to go and attach a Fighting Energy card to him, attach a Muscle Band to him as well. I think I'd rather use the Juniper as opposed to the Karina. I mean, there's no way our opponent can knock out both of our Pokemon because if he does use the G-Booster attachment, he's not able to snipe 20 damage to any of our bench Pokemon as well. So let's go and use the Juniper. Hopefully we can get some nicer cards. I'm going to go and lay down another Trubbish and a Landorus EX. Let's go and retreat that Trubbish, or I could Super Scoop of it. You know what? I think I'm going to go and stick with the retreat for the time being. Let's go and use the Hammerhead attack. Hit our opponent's Virizion EX for 70 damage and another 30 damage to our opponent's Genesect EX. Seems like our opponent definitely has the advantage for the moment, but I definitely think we can make a comeback. Again, it's too early in the game to determine, and we were quite lucky that the Trubbish did not get knocked out during the very first turn, especially given the fact that the vast majority of Virizion EX, Genesect EX decks tend to run a lot of Skyless, things like that, so I am quite thankful for that. But we just had a very, very unfortunate start. So it looks like the opponent's Genesect EX is probably going to knock out our Landorus EX with a single attack. But while doing so, he will have to discard a total of 2 Grass Energy cards. So hopefully we can take advantage of that. But again, we'll see how things sort of go from here. So we are seeing the special plasma energy getting attached to the opponent's Genesect EX. Again though, if our opponent did want to lure out one of our bench Pokemon, which I really don't think he would have in this sort of situation, Silent Lab would have prevented it regardless. So that's kind of nice. Let's go and bring out the Trubbish for the time being. I'm going to go and attach a fighting energy card to the Landorus EX. Use the N to lower the number of cards in our opponent's hand and get some new cards in our hand as well. And okay, so it looks like I have an Acrobike. We'll be using it. And I have a Lucario EX I could choose from, or the Super Scoop Up. Let's go and grab onto the Super Scoop Up for the time being. I'll also be using the Ultra Ball to discard a Fighting Energy card from our hand, and the Juniper to bring out the Garbodor and ultimately shut down all of our opponent's special abilities, especially given the fact that the Trubbish could potentially get knocked out with a mere 20 HP. So let's go and retreat that Garbodor, bring out the Landorus EX, and then use the Hammerhead attack to hit both of our opponent's Pokemon for some additional damage. I don't think our opponent's Genesect EX should be able to attack, but we never really know if he happens to have an energy card and the the Colress machine, I believe it was called. No, Colress machine. Sorry, I can't think of it off the top of my head. Okay, but looks like that Genesect EX is probably going to retreat, and the opponent's Virizion EX is going to start attacking us all over again to try and load up the Genesect EX for a second attack. Hopefully, we can knock out our opponent's Virizion EX. If I do use the Super Scoop Up, it would be nice. We are seeing the Hypnotoxic Laser. Opponent is going to flip the tails, getting hit for 50 damage, and the opponent's Genesect EX is going to get a couple of energy cards attached to it. So let's go and use the Super Scoop Up, really hoping for the heads here. Awesome, looks like we are gonna get it. Let's go and bring out the Garbodor, the Landorus EX, and attach a fighting energy card to it. I'm also gonna use the VS Seeker to look for the Karina, because I do want the Muscle Band attachment to knock out our opponent's Virizion EX and simultaneously look for another of our EX Pokemon. So let's go and grab out another Landorus EX and a Muscle Band. And awesome, that is going to give us our first knockout of the game. So let's go and bring out that Landorus EX. Another one to our bench, the Muscle Band, knock out our opponent's Virizion EX and hit that Genesect EX for a little bit more damage. And looks like we are going to be tied with respects to prize cards. That Genesect EX is quite crippled as well, though we should be able to get rid of it relatively easily. And okay, so looks like our opponent is going to be able to knock out our Landorus EX for another one-hit knockout. And the VS Seeker as well for the Colress. Only a mere 4 cards though, so that's a little bit unfortunate for our opponent, but that happened to be the only supporter card that he had in his discard pile. So I'm gonna go and bring out the Hawlucha. Should have, okay, so we have one of our Muscle Bands in the discard pile, so I'm probably gonna go and look for the Juniper, guys, hoping to knock out our opponent's Genesect EX using the Hawlucha, because there's almost no way that the Landorus EX can knock out our opponent's Genesect EX. So let's go and bring out the Garbodor, the Hawlucha to our bench, attach a fighting, the Floatstone to our second Trubbish. We are going to go and use the VS Seeker to look for the Professor Juniper. Hopefully this helps us out, guys. But okay, so we have the Acrobike. I'm going to go and use it, and no fighting energy card. That's a little bit unfortunate. Looks like that Genesect EX is going to be able to stick around for just a little bit longer. I'm going to go and bring out a Lucario EX as well. Attach the fighting, the fighting energy to the the Hawlucha. Let's go and bring it out and hit our opponent's Genesect EX for 60 damage. Should be able to knock it out during our next turn. And I'm probably going to use the Lysandre as well to lure out opponent's Genesect EX and then hopefully knock it out with the Landorus EX. Of course, that is provided that we are able to draw onto some sort of energy card. We have 6 of our energy cards in the discard pile, so 2 fightings, 2 strongs and 4 fighting energy cards, running a total of 12 energy cards. I don't actually think I'm going to be able to use the Lysandre unless, of course, we are able to draw onto another energy card. So I'm probably going to have to use the Juniper. Maybe the N as well would be a wise choice, just to lower the number of cards in our opponent's hand. We are seeing the Hypnotoxic Laser, another tails on our opponent's side. So he is getting a little bit unlucky with respects to the coin flips. And let's see if our opponent's Genesect EX is going to retreat. Again, I don't really foresee him as being able to attack this turn, and I also feel like it's really crucial that we shut down our opponent's Red Signal ability nice and early. I mean, if he was able to repeatedly lure out any of our bench Pokemon, the outcome of the battle I feel would be a lot different than how it currently is. So opponent is starting to load up his benched Genesect EX. Awesome, looks like we do have a fighting energy, so I'm going to go and attach that to the Landorus EX and then lure out our opponent's Genesect EX. Thinking if that is what I would like to do, guys, because I mean, of course, our opponent only requires 2 more prize cards to be able to win, so that may actually not be the wise option. So I'm gonna go and use the Ultra Ball to discard the Juniper and the N from our hand. Look for the very last Garbodor in our deck, bring it out, and then I'm gonna go and use the N to lower the number of cards in our opponent's hand. We do have the Super Scoop Up. Let's see. Well, I did just attach an energy card. I'm not really sure if I want to retreat and bring out the Landorus EX. I mean, it would be nice to stack some damage on our opponent's benched Genesect EX, but if he is somehow able to power up his Pokemon with the G-Booster, things like that, that would spell the end for us. So I feel like I'm just going to go and knock out our opponent's Genesect EX with the Hawlucha and then draw onto 2 of our prize cards. Again, I don't really think our opponent's Genesect EX should be able to attack this time around, but I do want to play on the safe side. We are seeing the Juniper come out. Opponent is going to get a whole lot more cards in his hand. I'm probably going to go and use the VS Seeker during our turn to look for another N, guys, just to lower the number of cards in the opponent's hand once again. I'm also going to use the Super Scoop Up to try and bring that Hawlucha back into our hand and then bring it back as our active Pokemon. Start dishing out some damage on our opponent's Genesect EX, again just because he needs a single EX knockout to be able to win, but he would need to knock out 2 or more Hawluchas. So especially since we have nullified the red signal ability, I feel like our priority should be to bring out the Hawlucha. We're seeing an Ultra Ball. Most likely we are going to see a Virizion EX come out on our opponent's bench, possibly the Jirachi EX as well. Okay, so it looks like it is indeed going to be another Virizion EX. But again, I don't think our opponent should be able to attack unless he has an energy switch and a switch and another energy card in his hand, which I feel like is extremely unlikely. So we should have the game. We do have the advantage, but again, we never know how things are going to work out. So opponent is just taking his time to think what move he would like to do next. Again, I don't really blame him, but we are seeing some lightning energies in our opponent's discard pile as well, so that means that he certainly has the Mega Manectric EX deck as well. Mega Manectric EX in his deck as well, in combination with the Virizion EX, Genesect EX. But of course, our opponent would be wise not to bring them out, given the fact that we do have those fighting type Pokemon. So let's go and use the Super Scoop Up, and we are going to flip the head, so that's kind of nice. Gonna go and bring out the Garbodor, the Hawlucha back into our bench, and attach a fighting energy card to him. And I could use the Lysander's trump card. Our opponent doesn't have a whole ton of cards in his hand. But I feel like I'm gonna go and use the VS Seeker to look for another N, lower the number of cards both in our hand and the opponent's hand, but I feel like it's sort of a good payout, so let's go and use that and retreat the Garbodor to bring out the Hawlucha and hit that Genesect EX for 80 damage. Hopefully we should be able to knock it out within the next 2 turns or so, but again, don't really know how things are going to end out from this point. Just a very close game at the moment. I feel like the game could go either way. So the Genesect EX is still requires 1 more energy card to be able to attack. Hopefully that N helped us. Hopefully the opponent had another energy card in his hand, which he was unfortunately unable to bring out due to the fact that we used the N. Our opponent also has a ton of energy cards in his discard pile, and of course, given the fact that he can't bring out his Mega Manectric EX unless he wants to risk a relatively easy knockout. Okay, but we are seeing the Professor's Letter. But again, the opponent wasn't really able to retreat a whole ton of his energy cards from the discard pile, so that was kind of nice. Our fighting type definitely made a difference, I would say. Okay, so the opponent is going to use the Professor's Letter, look for 2 energy cards. Okay, so it looks like it's only a Lightning energy card, so the opponent no longer has Grass energy cards in his deck, guys, so there's absolutely no way that he can win. And yeah, so unfortunately it looks like the opponent has lost. Unfortunately, all his Grass energy cards were in the discard pile, and 1 more Grass energy happened to be prized. So yeah, so that's pretty much going to be our victory, guys. Okay, so it looks like the opponent is going to play till the very end while we knock him out. don't think we have any more of the muscle bands. We have two in the discard pile, so just go and knock out our opponent's Genesect EX and end this battle as soon as possible. Again, the opponent can't really do anything. We are seeing a Hypnotoxic Laser come out, a Tails, a Professor Juniper once again, and we're gonna be able to go into the victory even if our opponent's Genesect EX does retreat. Okay, so let's go knock it out, take the very last two prize cards, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this very last deck that I'll be taking a look at before the Roaring Skies set release. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.